Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 43rd episode this week, where we will be recapping last Sunday's game versus the New York Jets, previewing the Patriots' upcoming game versus the Indianapolis Colts, and discussing news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary and news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com, where we have been having more blogs being posted, including one that just came out this week. So, Kevin, let's get into last week's game versus the New York Jets. Wasn't the prettiest of games, but a win is a win. They ended up winning 22-17, and it wasn't really as close as the score indicates. What was your overall thoughts?
I think, like we said, this was a much needed win, kind of a season-saving win, because we kind of went through the schedule and how many games are left, where these are the games you need to win, especially since
I think we did that off camera.
Did we?
I think so.
I don't know. So let's say, even if we did do that off camera, we're going to say it right now. These are the games that you need to win, where you had 10 games left, now 9 after this. 2 of them against Buffalo. So I'm going to write those 2 both off. I'm going to assume they're going to lose those games. Something could happen there, but Buffalo is a juggernaut right now. So there were 3 and 4 entering this game. Realistically, you need at least 9 wins to make the playoffs. 9's probably going to make it this year, but there's going to be a lot of tiebreaker situations. So 10 would be a little bit more preferable. So to get to 10, you need to win of your 10 games 6.
7.
So
or 6.
Yeah, 6. 7. 7. You're right. Yeah, 7 plus 3 is 10. So
and then the Bills, that's really, you have to win 7 of the other 8.
Yeah, so 7 of 8 basically. So this big stretch was going to be really important. So you need to win the games that you're supposed to win. So really good win for the Patriots here. Wasn't the prettiest of wins. The offensive line was terrible. We're going to get into that. The offensive line really made Mac look worse than he actually was. Mac actually played a pretty good game for the most part on this. A lot of the times he was sped up because of the offensive line, and that would have happened to anyone. If you had Bailey Zapp in there, he would have crapped his pants, and you wouldn't have seen him after halftime.
Or Zach Wilson.
So you see what pressure happens. Mac had, I think, almost a 50% pressure rating in the game. I think it was like 48.5 or something like that, which is insane. When I first saw that, I was like, holy shit, I've never seen a pressure rating that high in so long. And like we said, anything over 30% is a pretty high pressure, and almost 50% of your dropbacks being pressured. He did a really good job with that, and kind of fighting through. He had a really good, a lot of third down plays where they converted, and they weren't just third and short; they were third and long, and they converted on there. So I thought it was a step in the right direction for Mac, and I'm excited to kind of see what happens going forward. So anyone that says it coming on this game, if you're just watching it on TV and you're just, Mac doesn't look bad, you have to take into account all the variables. Number 1, how the line was playing. Number 2, the Jets defense is actually really good. And number 3, this is basically his first game back. So all of those things included, and really kind of how he fought through, I thought actually he played a pretty good game here.
No, I agree. Just going on the game itself, I know both of us aren't as big into the Jets as some people in the media are, but it is a road win versus a divisional opponent who is 5-2. And sometimes those games against divisional opponents will be closer than they should be, just because you play them twice a year, they get to know you, and it's just a tough fought win. But overall, they played good enough to win. And like you said, Mac Jones, I thought, had a pretty good game. Wasn't perfect by any stretch of the means, but it was a good game and a step in the right direction. He was 24 of 35, 194 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 6 times. The interception wasn't his fault. The offensive line was awful, and then he got hit as he was throwing, which was kind of a lame duck pass. There also was that pick 6 that was negated due to roughing the passer penalty, which it was the correct call. I don't know if that should be the right call, but the way the rules are written, that was the right call. But if you look back at the play, and then they also said it after the game, Jacoby Myers ran the wrong route. So it's tough to say if he ran the right route, if it would have been a great decision. but it's tough to really put that 100% on Mac if he's throwing it to where receivers aren't when they should be. But overall, he made some really good decisions, and it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully, he builds on that. He's starting to get his confidence back, and he can start looking like the player he was last year, but get improving more and taking more downfield throws and improving where he was last year.
Yep. Yeah. I think one of the things too we had mentioned where some of the stuff where Mac, this is kind of overall throughout the season and a lot in the last kind of in the last game or two, where we've been seeing a lot more RPOs, a lot of option routes, so run pass option for people not familiar with the term. And that's something that Mac has wanted to do more of because it's something that he did a lot of at Alabama. And they did throw some in at the end of the year last year. And I actually was really excited when I saw it because I thought he looked really comfortable with that. And then Damian Harris did too, because that's what he ran there with Mac. Not really at the same time because they weren't together like playing at the same time, but
they were on the team
on the same
at the
team,
same time, but
they
Mac wasn't
actually
playing when Harris was playing.
So but they both looked really comfortable with it. And Mac, again, he's not a statue. He's not the slow Tom Brady quarterback. He can move, and we did see that. He ran for over 30-40 yards again last game. And I think
he has a faster 40 time than Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have the build of someone like Josh Allen or Ben Roethlisberger, so you don't want him running it all the time. But if you need to pick up a first down and it's open, he can do it.
Yeah. So
he just has to learn to slide better and not stay up and get an extra hit. But
so he can't pull a Tua and try and like get concussed. But like what I was saying with the RPOs is some of these interceptions and miscues are on a lot of these different option routes. So not even just the run pass, but even just the different options that the receivers are given to run. So I wonder if we're going to see a lot of that cleaned up as the season goes forward, and even next year when they've had more time together. Where Parker, it's his first year with the team. A lot of these are first and second year players. With Mac. So it's going to take a little bit of time for all of that to get cleaned up. It does take time to get on the same page. And we saw with Brady before, it took him years to develop trust with anyone. So that's why a lot of receivers never worked out here, because he held people to way too high of a standard. So again, that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. And then Jacoby Myers, he's been your most dependable wide receiver the last 3 years. But even so, with the new offense, with them doing more of those option routes for the receivers, it's more likelihood that receiver and quarterback can be on the wrong page, which could lead into interceptions, which we've seen so far. So I wonder if they're going to tone that back a little bit in the next coming weeks, just until they get more on the same page to limit the turnovers and try and get it ready for the deep stretch of the season.
Yep. Kind of moving on next, the offensive line is really the biggest story of the game. They were awful. Cole Strange had, I think, probably his worst game of the year.
He did. And he was benched at times for Isaiah Wynn.
Yeah, benched at times for Isaiah Wynn. His game beforehand actually wasn't good at all either. So he's had two kind of really bad back-to-back games.
He was going up against two good offensive lines in his defense, defensive line, sorry. But he did have good performances versus really good defensive lines before that versus the Steelers and the Browns. But two tough weeks, but he is a rookie. He's still learning. So hopefully it's not a sign of things to come, but hopefully he just starts to, as he sees more, he learns and he corrects it and gets better.
Yeah, I think some of it's going to have to get corrected kind of really over the offseason, just gaining weight and strength, where we'll see a lot of times with offensive linemen coming in, they do need to gain that NFL weight, where he is a little, even though he is a tall, big dude, he still needs to gain more kind of NFL strength, so like that lower body strength, where you're not getting pushed around. So I think we're going to see that after really this year. You can kind of hone in on that. And Marcus Cannon was probably the worst offensive lineman they had in this game. Where
I don't know. They were all bad.
Well, he had allowed the most pressures out of anyone. He allowed 9 pressures out of all offensive linemen, which was the most by far. I think the next most was I think 3 or 4. So he was much worse than Wynn was. But Wynn played a lot less. So When
And
they
then
played, I think
Ferentz
30.
was pushed around a lot too.
Ferentz was pushed around. The only one that had a semi good game was maybe I guess you could say Owenu and maybe Brown, but
Yeah.
they were all bad, and
Yeah.
that needs to all get kind of cleaned up. And then what you and I were talking about after the game is really what are they going to do about the right tackle situation, because they can't be sustained this way, because you're going to get your quarterback killed. So they've already got Mac taken out once. It wasn't the right tackle the first time, but they had Hoyer taken out. They almost had Zappi taken out. They've had penalties. They've had fumbles happen because of it. So
Interceptions.
what are they going to do about the right tackle situation? So one, you could say stay the course and something will happen. I'm
Yep.
not really in favor of that. Number two, you have Kajus that came back, and you've had him this long. You might as well use him. And if he's not going to work out, then you got to get rid of him, because what are you doing just keeping him around if you're not even going to try and play him?
Yeah.
I was a little upset they did activate him for the game, and they didn't even try him out by how bad they were playing. So I would have liked to see him there, even though he was his first game back, but I would maybe try him out. And the last situation would be I would
Just two
kick.
more.
Well, there's the next best situation would be you kick Owenu out to right tackle,
Yep.
and then you either move Isaiah Wynn to guard or find someone else to play guard, or maybe have Ferentz play guard, or someone else.
Yeah.
And Owenu was a really dependable right tackle, but he's played really well this year at right guard. So do you really want to mess that up?
And then one thing with that, which it's probably lesser on their mind, but he has one more year under contract after this year. And if he's switching positions where he was guard to tackle to guard to tackle, and I wonder if that's something where he'd be hesitant to re-sign, even though he likes the for as far as we know, he likes the team and coaching. But if he doesn't have a set position, if that's something that would make him not want to re-sign if he's getting similar money.
And what's your last situation?
Last situation is you move Isaiah Wynn back to left tackle and Trent Brown to right tackle, because Isaiah Wynn historically, even though he wasn't a great left tackle, he was a lot more serviceable than he is right now at right tackle.
That's fair. And some people can only play one side. It's just something in their mind where they, if you could play left, but you can't play right. So that could be another option too.
And we saw that with Justin Herron last year too, where he was horrendous at right tackle, but at left tackle, he was serviceable when he played there in place of Wynn.
Yep. Yeah, that's really fair. The best thing coming out of this game was really Ramondre Stevenson.
One more thing, just on it relates to the offensive line, is it kind of put the Patriots in a bad situation, because not only was it 6 sacks allowed, but they had 14 plays that resulted in negative yardage and 3 additional runs that resulted in null gains. So you had 17 plays outside of incomplete passes that either were negative yards or no yards, which is absolutely horrendous. And that just puts the offense in a much tougher situation to have any success.
Yep. Now moving on, Ramondre Stevenson is the brightest spot of this game. He's just really cemented himself on the Patriots as being that number one running back where you could really depend on for really everything. He can really do everything, where he's really good in the run game. And you saw that multiple times where there was no hole. Anyone else basically would have been stopped, and he somehow broke free and gained a lot more yards afterwards. He in the catching game, he's developed these soft hands. He's able to make these different catches and get a lot of yards afterwards, and it's really dependable. And even a little short screen or flat can end up being 5-10 yards for him. And then his blocking is really good, a lot better than it was last year. I remember when he first came in, he almost got Matt killed once. I remember he blew a block, and he had a fumble. Then he didn't see him for a while. But his blocking has been extraordinary in the run, just as a pass blocking, in the receiving, blocking for other players. He's just looked really well, all kind of 3 phases for a back. So really excited to see what he does the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's been probably your best player on offense this year. This game, 16 carries, 71 yards, 7 catches, 72 yards. 13 of his 16 rushing attempts, he was met at or behind the line of scrimmage with contact, and he still averaged 5.1 yards after contact, 4.4 yards per carry, which is incredible. And like you said, his receiving, he's pretty much turned into who the Patriots were hoping Sony Michel would turn into when they used a first round pick to draft Sony Michel, hoping that he would turn into an Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook type player, where he's a 3-down running back and he's also a threat out of the backfield, which makes your offense less one-dimensional. Where when you have LeGarrette Blount, when he's in the game, pretty much they're running the ball. If James White's in the game, they're passing it. With Stevenson, you don't really know. Chances are early downs, they're more likely to run it. But as this offense starts to find itself more, they can start passing it, especially to him out of the backfield on first and second down, which can give the offense a lot more options.
Yep. Agree completely. Kind of now moving on to the Jets front. Zach Wilson, like we mentioned kind of in the previous week, also drafted 2021 draft, second overall. And he's very talented physically wise. Mentally wise, I don't think he's got anything going. So you see it, you saw it this game, you saw the previous games against the Patriots where you get him kind of on the fly and he's trying to improvise. He can't do anything. And he makes a ton of mistakes. And you could tell if you just saw what the Jets were doing this year when he was playing and while the success they're having, they were basically deathly afraid of him doing anything. And they played very cautious with him. They told him not to turn over the ball and be very simple and different things that they basically did for Zappy this year, where they had a very simplistic offense, tried to limit any turnovers and mistakes. And what Bill is really good at is really exploiting your weakness. And the weakness with him is the second you get pressure and try and make him run around, he's going to be throwing off his back foot. He's going to be making mistakes. And he had 3 interceptions. And I wouldn't have been surprised if he had even more based on just how much pressure they got on him. And the big question I would say with him too is he going to be coachable enough eventually? He's got the talent to do it, but there's also stories out there is that he doesn't take coaching well. And is that going to change? Do they need to get someone in there that's more offensive minded for like a stronger offensive coordinator? I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how he kind of goes forward. But looking at him, just oof.
Yeah. And his numbers make it look like he had a better game than he did. He was 20 of 41 with 355 yards, 2 TDs, 3 interceptions. But a lot of those yards came in garbage time or just very big chunk plays where otherwise he just didn't look that good. And like you said, under pressure, he just looked like a chicken with his head cut off, where once he sees pressure, he pretty much runs straight backwards, takes his eyes off downfield. And that's where it opens up the more likelihood of bad plays or things like that. And like you said, he does have all the talent in the world. One thing I wonder is it makes me think a little bit of Josh Allen early on, where Josh Allen was he was awful his first 2 years with the Bills, but towards the end of his second year, the Bills kind of dialed down what they wanted him to do and try and have him limit his mistakes. And that's where he started to find himself and take off. I don't know if the Jets have that mentality.
Brian Daboll, though.
Yeah, that's true. They also had Brian Daboll, but the Jets are a completely different franchise, different structure. And I don't know if he has the talent. So maybe we've seen Josh Allen go from awful to top quarterback in the NFL, and Zach Wilson has the talent, but I don't know if he's going to have the mindset or the coaching and the talent around him to do it. And we'll have to see. I don't, if I had to put money on it, I don't think he's going to succeed. But also, to begin with, last year, he went into the Jets. They didn't have a quarterback on the roster with any NFL experience until they traded for Joe Flacco towards the end of the season. Whereas what the Patriots did, they went out and got Brian Hoyer. They had Mac learn from an experienced quarterback. And if they had Flacco or something like that, where Zach Wilson would be able to learn through all minicamp, all training camp throughout the season, where it's not all on him, that would help him. Whereas he just had to try and figure it out by himself and just try and use his talent alone instead of learning how to actually play quarterback.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. Run defense. What are your thoughts on them?
I thought it was pretty well. The Patriots defense was at an advantage because Brees Hall was out, and even though the Jets did get James Robinson, who I'm high on, he had less than a week of practice to really learn the offense, so he didn't really have too many opportunities. So overall defense, or the Jets ran it 15 times for 51 yards, 3.4 yards per carry. So they did a good job against it, but they also weren't facing a tough challenge in that respect as well. But hopefully it just sets them in the right direction for the Colts coming up this week.
Yep. I know that they had some tight end production. I think that was one of the kind of your keys to mention. Conklin, 6 catches, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Uzma, 1 catch, 27 yards. Any other thoughts before we get to 3 up?
Yeah, the only reason why I put this in that I wanted to touch on is the few games where the Patriots have actually allowed the opponent's tight ends to have production was against Baltimore, where Mark Andrews, granted he's one of the best tight ends in football, had 2 touchdowns, and then against the Jets, where their tight ends haven't had much production this year, but this game they combined for 7 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and both games the Patriots were without Kyle Duggar. So I wonder how much of an impact that's going to be. Hopefully he's coming back soon. I know he's listed as a limited participant in practice today. Today's Wednesday when we're filming, but that's something to keep an eye on as the season goes on. He's missed a couple games. He got banged up a little bit. If you have to go stretches without him or without one of your key safeties, him or Adrian Phillips, how's that going to impact the tight end production of your opponents?
Really fair. All right, 3 up, 3 down. I think this will be pretty easy and quick since we have very similar ones here. I think in just different orders.
Yeah.
So I'll go first. Stevenson, like I said, your best offensive player in the game. Well, probably the best player in the game, in my opinion. So he really did it all: blocking, catching, running. He was awesome.
Yeah, I have him as my number 2 up. And you had a win versus opponent with a winning record on the road. But he had a really good game, especially considering how bad the offensive line was. But I just put him number 2 because old, reliable Nick Folk, big kick Nick, 5 for 5 on field goals with 4 of them being 40+ yards. He was your MVP last year. Kind of sad a playoff team's MVP as a kicker, but he was your MVP last year, and he's your consistency where this whole season and even last season, especially the first half, the offense, once it gets into the red zone or the new red zone within the 30, they've struggled where if you get in that area and you don't turn the ball over, at least you know you're going to be leaving with points because you have Nick Folk in. He just continues to just be who he is, old, reliable.
Yep, I've got Folk. He's my 3rd up. I think part of the reason why too is just that you kind of gotten. You kind of take it for granted now, where he's probably the most accurate field goal kicker we've actually ever had on the team, which is
saying something.
Yeah, it's insane to think about, and you just always kind of forget about him just because every time he goes up there, you're expecting him to make the kick, and that isn't the case for really any other franchise except for probably Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he was outstanding in this game. If you didn't have him, you probably wouldn't have won the game. So, agree there. My next one was a combination of Dedrick Wise and Matthew Judon. I couldn't really separate them because they were both really good in this game, and they both created a ton of pressure on Zach Wilson. And I think Judon did a much better job this game than against Fields, where containing the edge and making sure he wasn't breaking it too much and breaking containment. And it was a lot better in the run game here too. So I thought they were really good. Wise is continuing having a good season, and I'm actually really impressed. And I've had him a lot more in the 3 up than I ever thought I was ever going to have. So.
No, they're both I had them as my number 3 up. They both had a really, really good game. Wise led the NFL in pressures this week with 8. Judon was second in pressures with 7. Both had a pass breakup. Judon was also tasked with he was chipping a lot, both with the tight ends coming off, as well as some of the wide receivers too, where Garrett Wilson, who was the Jets' number 1 receiver in the game, Judon was tasked with chipping him sometimes, either if he was coming across the middle or even just off the line of scrimmage. And then he was a big reason for a couple of the interceptions as well, getting that pressure. And he's been your best or both of them have been two of your best players this season, and they just continue to shine.
Yep. So I think we all hit all of the three. So
Yep.
one honorable mention for me, you have two of them, but one of
Yep.
them's the same. Peppers was awesome in this game.
Yeah.
He was really explosive. He was fast. Had a really good block in special teams. He looks like a much better player than he looked in training camp in the preseason. So
Yeah.
it looks like he's, I would assume, fully healthy now with his knee. It does take a little bit of time once you have that ACL, but it looks like he's fully back. I'm really kind of excited to see how he looks the rest of the season because he looked really good in this game. And I think with him looking this good, it really frees up Duggar to maybe be that middle linebacker where you're struggling, and then have Peppers take over that low, strong safety spot.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. He was incredible, and even he did have that one penalty for a late hit, but I didn't really mind it as much at that time. Yes, you don't want to have penalties, especially ones that are kind of unforced, but the defense was struggling. They just seemed out of it, and he was trying to set that tone. So granted, you don't want to give up free yards, but it was setting the tone where it was giving your defense the mentality that they needed. And he's looked really good, like you said. If he's coming into focus, which we were hoping for, and I think, if I'm correct, he was my X factor for the defense in the preseason, where if he turns into that Pro Bowl, all-pro type defensive back who can play all across, he can play slot, he can play outside corner, he can play free safety, strong safety, he can play in the box. That's going to free up your defense to do a lot more than or just do a lot more, especially with your linebackers struggling. And then just that block. I don't know if you guys haven't seen it. His block on that punt return that's freed Marcus Jones to go 20 something yards or 30 yards. He just absolutely laid out the guy and pancaked him. It was a sight to see. So not only is he giving you production on defense, it's also in the special teams as well.
All right. And then your other honorable mention?
My other honorable mention is someone who's been in my bottom three most of the season this year and sometimes last year, Jake Bailey. I just had to include him because he actually had a really good game considering how awful he was the week before. He had 4 punts, 2 were technically inside the 20. There was a third one that should have been, but was it McMillan? Or no, it was
the undrafted rookie, DeMarcus Mitchell,
where he got it and then he pretty much tripped over himself for 10 yards and it was a touchback, but that really should have been, it was a really good punt by him. And he just did a really good job, which helped the Patriots win the field position battle where the Jets, I believe they didn't start past the 25-yard line.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right too. All right, moving on real quick. 3 down, very similar here too. My first one, offensive line. We talked about them at nauseum. They were awful. Really bad in the game.
No, I agree. Nothing much more to add other than what we already said, but they were just horrendous. And if they don't improve, Patriots' success this year is not likely.
All right. Next one for me. This is really hard to get the next two. Josh Butch, though, I picked. He gave up 2 touchdowns. They were not all fully on him. But just the fact he gave up the 2 touchdowns. The first one was a really good pass. I don't know how much more he could have done to defend it. The other one, it was kind of a split between him and Miles Bryant. But 2 touchdowns he gave up. You also said that he was going to be a key to the game. So because I was focusing on him and he gave up those, I added him in there.
So to be fair, I didn't say it on the podcast. I texted you because in my dream the night before the game, I had a dream that he was a key to the game. Mm-hmm. But I didn't include him because, yes, he did give up the 2 touchdowns, but they weren't really on him. The first one, I thought it was actually pretty good coverage by him. It was just a really good throw, just in a spot where it was just for I believe it was Conklin. Only he could get it, and there's not really much more you can ask for. He was someone that in the training camp, preseason, mini camp, he was lighting it up, and we just haven't seen much of him this year. But hopefully, he is only in his second year. Hopefully, he starts to turn it around. But I didn't have him in my bottom 3. My second one was red zone offense, where just once again, another thing where we saw it last year, especially the first half, but throughout the entire season this year, once the Patriots offense gets within the third opponent's 30-yard line, they just struggle. And it just happened once again, which led to the Patriots having to kick 5 field goals, only getting one touchdown. Yeah, one touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something they really have to correct as well, because as the season goes on against tougher opponents, and then if you make the playoffs and you want to go on a deep playoff run, you can't expect to win if you're not converting inside the 30.
Yep, and that's something that everyone will want to check out. A blog Eric just put up there about kind of the differences in primetime games and how the Patriots have struggled there. That they need to start scoring more, and red zone offense is a big key there. My last one, Kendrick Bourne. Really, he didn't do anything really bad in this game, but the reason why I have him here is he didn't do anything good in this game. He played in over 70% of the 70% of the snaps. And I don't remember seeing him do anything. He had one target, no catch, and nothing. So I'm a big Bourne fan. I think hopefully by him seeing more and more of the field that he'll get more and more of the action, because I think he is dynamic. But just the fact that he's out there so much and didn't do anything, I just have him down there.
Yeah, I didn't include him because he didn't really have any negative plays, but it still just baffles me how he went from being your top playmaker last year, having almost 1,000 yards, and that's with him only playing 50% of the snaps the first 3 quarters of the season, to having almost no production. I think we're halfway through the season. He has 170 total yards through 8 games. And that's versus 900 something. And even last year, they did a lot of jet sweeps with him where he was able to pick up yards. And I'm surprised they haven't even incorporated that into the offense, considering how stagnant it's been at times. Just adding another wrinkle, but I don't get it. But hopefully that's something that he starts to break out soon, because he still is one of your better offensive targets, and you kind of want to get production out of anywhere you can.
Yep. And he was also actually one other thing to put him in the down. He was the reason for the 12 men in the huddle, which he was getting kind of lashed out by the coaches afterwards too. And I don't know, it's happened a few times with him. So I don't know if maybe he's just not paying attention or what, but maybe that's why he's in the doghouse, but we'll see. All right, moving on quick. News around the NFL, big trade deadline, probably the biggest one in NFL history. It keeps getting better and better each year. McCaffrey to the 49ers, Robinson to the Jets, Chubb to the Dolphins, really to the Jaguars, and a very interesting trade, which I would have done. I don't think anyone would have thought to do something like that. So that was very out of the box, very odd that it happened at the trade deadline, not in the offseason.
And hearing the terms, you would think if one team was going to do that, you would think it would be Belichick for having a trade that complex. But really confusing, and who even knows with him if what's going to happen. He's had a lot of issues. Very interesting though. Claypool to the Bears, Hawkinson to the Vikings, Jeff Wilson to the Dolphins, Roquan Smith to the Ravens, Robert Quinn to the Eagles, Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs. I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to say it anyway. Naheem Hines to the Bills, and then Robbie Anderson to the Cardinals. There are a few others, but those were just the main ones.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, just talking about Chubb to the Dolphins, going to make them even better on defense. It would be really interesting to see what happens against the Patriots offensive line with that added. And Hines, the Bills didn't really make any sense to me, just because what they're lacking is a running back, and they get another pass catching one, which really kind of confused me. So I don't know really why they went with that. Well, maybe it might be better for him. But those are the kind of the two that stood out. McCaffrey we've already talked about in the other podcast, so you can skip that. So Bills didn't look good against the Packers. Still beat them by 10. The Packers have been kind of falling off a cliff, and they're not really looking at a good spot. And they're definitely not going to win the division this year, with the Vikings being 6-1 already. So
unless Kirk Cousins has a
big meltdown,
huge meltdown. I don't know how many primetime games they have left. I know there's the Thanksgiving game versus the Pats on primetime, but other than that, I don't know how many primetime games they have. So that could be the Packers saving grace.
Yep. All these other ones I'm just gonna run down. If you have anything after I run down, just feel free to mention out. Bengals lose to the Browns by 19. Rams lose at home to the 49ers by 17. Let's go Jimmy G. Raiders shut out at home to the Saints 24-0. Josh has second closed door meeting with Mark Davis after the game. And then Dolphins squeaked by the Lions 31-27, which I didn't actually know happened. So anything you'd like to really comment on those?
Nothing really on those.
All right.
I guess just one other one is Buccaneers lost a tight game on Thursday night, but even though they're 3-5, they're only one game back of their division, and their division's kind of trash. So I still expect Tom Brady to make the playoffs.
Yep. All right. 5 questions around the league. First one. Does the Bengals loss to the Browns tell you anything about the Patriots or the league?
I guess the couple things that just come to mind quick is there's a lot of parity where any given week, one team could beat another. We saw it last week where the Bears beat the Patriots in kind of a blowout. But I think another thing it tells you is how important offensive line is in football. And teams can only go so far as how productive their offensive line is, where if you don't have enough time to throw the ball, or if running backs aren't able to get separation, you're not going to be able to do anything.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a big thing where number one, I think one of the reasons too, it's a divisional game and divisional games are really weird. Number two, there's a ton of parity where anything could really happen. Any team other than really the Bills and the Chiefs. I don't know enough about the Eagles yet this year to really put them in that category. Anyone else, it's the Bills and the Chiefs than everyone else. So anything could really happen there. So I don't think the Bengals losing to the Browns can say, well, the Patriots beat the Browns by this much. That means that they could beat the Bengals still. You can't really say that. I think it shows the middling of the teams, the offensive line. And then even look at Brady this past weekend. He's playing really well for, if you look at all of his stats and the yards, he just doesn't have a line to protect
and
him.
If you actually watch his throws too, he's making the throws. It's just, it's similar to a 2019 situation where the offensive line sucks. There's no running game. The receivers aren't that good and getting separation. But the difference is he doesn't have good coaching this time around. Yep.
So, all right. Moving on. Next question. This is based off of this idiotic take by Derek Carr. Is it Derek Carr?
David Carr, his brother.
David Carr. Derek Carr is the quarterback.
They're both quarterbacks.
David Carr is the NFL Network guy, right?
Yes.
All right. I wrote Derek Carr by accident. So David Carr of NFL Network had posted this 2021 redraft of the NFL of the quarterbacks in the 2021 draft. He ended up ranking them Fields, Mills, Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Ellinger, Jones, and then Ian Book, which I don't know what the hell he's doing. He's probably just doing this for clicks.
Yeah.
But because of this, I figured we can do our own little redraft and see what you think the order should be for that.
So my order would be Jones, Lawrence, I guess Mills, Fields, Wilson, Lance, Ellinger, Book. I think I'm going Lawrence too, even though he hasn't really shown it as much. He's in a tough situation in Jacksonville, and he does have a good coach this year, but he has all the talent in the world. I went Mills 3 just because he's had success and he also doesn't really have talent around him. And he's gone through 2 coaching situations, but I feel like he's not going to be the best quarterback out of any of them, but he can have a decent floor where he can be possibly a Derek Carr type quarterback. He's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's not going to be someone that's out of the league in a couple of years. And then Fields, Wilson, they both have a lot of talent, but I don't know it. Well, Fields has gotten a little better the past couple of weeks, but I still don't fully buy into him. Wilson, he has the talent, but can he get it all together? Lance is just a crapshoot, so who knows? Then I don't know enough about Ellinger, who's played one game in his entire career, and then David Carr has above Mac Jones, and then Book, I just don't know.
Yeah. So I would go Lawrence, Wilson, Jones. Oh, and then it gets tricky. Then I would go. So I go Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Mills, Fields, Lance, Ellinger, Book.
Yeah.
So I go Lawrence and Wilson just because both of them have a ton of talent, and I'd rather take the chance on talent and assume you can coach them up. Lawrence hasn't had really any good coaching, at least his first year. Who knows about his the coaching now this year? I'm not a big fan of Peterson. Wilson, again, he hasn't had a real good quarterback coaching, I don't think. And if I was the Patriots, I wonder what Bill could do with him. Could he break through? And then Jones, I put next because Jones is probably the smartest quarterback, the best kind of
That
reading different things.
that's why I put Jones number one because
Yeah.
of that.
But because the other ones had better physical stats, you just look at Josh Allen. So
Yeah, that's fair.
Patrick Mahomes. So that's why the way the league is, if you got one of those two juggernauts. So
Yeah.
I figure them. And then the other ones, I don't think Fields is really going to be anything special. He's got too
Yeah.
long of a throwing motion, so he's never going to be a good throwing quarterback. And he's not as big as why am I forgetting his name? The quarterback of the Ravens,
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. So he's not a big running back sort of kind of quarterback. So eventually he's going to get hurt the way he's trying to play. So
Yeah.
and he's already gotten hurt a few times. So all right, moving on. Next question: will Tom Brady play another year next year? If so, who will he play with?
I think he's going to, just because with how bad the Bucs are this year, people are restarting the narrative from 2019 that he's starting to fall and his talent is starting to dip off and he's not the same player anymore. Where if you actually watch him, you can tell he's still the same player. He still can make the same throws. Last year, he led the league in every single quarterback stat essentially, and his ability hasn't really declined. It's just the talent around him. So I think he's not going to want to call it quits after the year he's having this year around him. Who it's going to be with, the tricky thing is, part of it might be influenced by where Giselle and the kids live. So if they're staying in Tampa or in Florida, I could see him going to Miami if Miami doesn't believe in Tua. Granted, Tua is having a really good year this year, so they might not be willing to do that. But if they don't think he's the answer, I could see him going to Miami. I could also see him going to the Titans, where he's seen the last couple of years, especially this year and last year, how limited having bad coaching is for a quarterback. And by going to the Titans, they might not have the best weapons, but he knows he's going to coach who he trusts in Mike Vrabel, who I think is a top three head coach. Another team I could see is just the 49ers. He's from San Fran. I don't know how he would fit in a Shanahan style offense and if Shanahan would even want him, but that's another one where if they don't believe in Trey Lance, I could see him going there too.
Yep. So I think those are good points. I say Vegas. So Vegas can easily.
Oh yeah, Vegas. That completely eluded me too. I could see him going to Vegas too. And then Derek Carr has a tradable contract.
Yep.
Even though he did just sign to an extension.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even though he signed through his extension, his contract is very movable. And he's not getting paid an insane amount. So another team would be willing to take on that money too. I would definitely, if I were them, if I was, especially Josh, because I don't think Derek Carr is anything special. And to have a year or two of Brady, I would do that in a heartbeat. And then
even for Vegas, out of all the teams talent wise, they're probably outside of Miami, where you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's the best talent situation that he can go into.
Yep, he's got Adams. He's got Renfro is basically the slot wide receiver that we know and love for like the New England system.
Yep.
49ers, I could see them, even though they have Lance, I could see them kind of saying, oh, he's still not ready, his knee, that sort of thing, and to give him time and learn behind Brady. I don't think, though, that of all the stuff that came out with the 49ers stuff, where Brady and him kind of got into a disagreement, that probably won't happen. So I would say Vegas. Miami would be interesting, and Titans, but I would go with them. Next question. What the hell?
I saw it on Twitter and it made me think.
If you had 100 opportunities to tackle Derrick Henry, how many times did you be able to? So is this
0.
like head on or
like a tackling drill, where the Oklahoma drill, where you're just have an opportunity to tackle and are you able to actually tackle him and take him down?
I would say once, just because there'd be one. Every time I'd go for like his lower body and try and get his ankle and like trip him up. So I would say I'd be tackling very dirty, but I'd be going for his knee and ankles. But I would say I think 1 out of 100 times I'd probably get one.
Yeah, I'm still going 0 just because he pretty much has tree trunks for legs, and no matter what you do, he's just going to run over you if you're not a NFL
He's probably going
linebacker.
to jump over me. So,
Yeah.
but
so I'm going 0, but I was interested to see if you thought you'd be able to take him down at least once, like some tricky way.
Yeah, I would say at least once if I do the same thing every time. I think one of the times I'd get lucky, but it wouldn't be any skill of mine. And then last one, after Devin McCourty's second interception last week, he now has 33 career interceptions, third all time in Patriots history, trailing Ty Law and Raymond Claiborne by 3. Will he finish his career with the most interceptions in Patriots history?
It's tough to say. I think it depends on how much longer he plans on playing, but I'm going to go with yes, just because he's played on every snap on defense. I believe every game or almost every game this year. And even though you can see his ability starting to slip a little bit, he's still a pretty good safety. And I can see him playing this year, next year, and maybe another one. So I think we saw how many interceptions Deron Harmon got just by being in the right place at the right time. So I think he'll be able to sneak out at least 3, maybe 4 to at least tie or take sole possession.
I'll say he'll finish because even if he plays only this year, he's still got half a season left and he got 2 interceptions on the game. So to get 3 in half a season coming up, I think he could do it. And I'd say if at most he's probably playing only one more season after this. I think he's 36 years old. So and with his brother being retired, in the slippage. But all right, moving on. Trivia.
So 2 questions. First one, the Patriots lost to the Colts last week. So it's Colts centered or last year.
Yep.
It's Colts centered since we're facing the Colts this upcoming week.
Right.
The Patriots lost to the Colts last year, 27-17. When was the last time before that the Patriots lost to the Colts?
Oh, it would have been probably Peyton Manning's last year with them. Which, oh God, when was that? 2013 was Denver. 2011?
Nope.
2010?
Nope.
2009?
Yes, the famous 4th and 2 game.
Oh.
Peyton Manning was with the Colts in 2010 and 2011. The Patriots won in 2010, 31-28, and then 2011 they won 31-24. But it was the 4th and 2 at their own 28-yard line game.
Right.
And then the second question, just very quickly, the Patriots lost last year by 10 points. When was the last time the Patriots lost by more than 1 score to the Colts?
Oh God. I can't. I don't. 2000?
No. It was 2005, where they lost to the Colts in, I believe, week 9, 40-21 at Gillette Stadium.
Right.
And that's it.
All right, moving on. Colts preview. Let's see how we can get this in. So Colts are coming in somehow 3-4-1, which I would have expected the record to be worse based on how their offense has played this year. They tied against the Texans. They beat the Chiefs. Again, weird. Broncos, not surprising anyone beating them. And then the Jaguars. And have lost to the Titans, Commanders, Titans, and Jaguars.
And then tied the Texans.
Yeah, I mentioned that, right?
Oh, okay.
So again, last year they lost 27-17. Kind of a big loss, and Eric talked about this in his blog about primetime losses. Kind of how do you rate the Colts going into this one? They have Sam Ehlinger's 2021 6th-round pick. David Carr ranks him better than Mac Jones for some reason. I don't know why. He's probably doing shrooms. What are your thoughts on the QB situation over there?
Yeah, so the Colts game, it's kind of a little tough to fully preview because it reminds me a little bit of the Bears preview, where the offense hasn't really been that productive. They did have one game where they scored 24 points versus the Jaguars, but again, that's the Jaguars. Other than that, they scored 20 points two other times, one win versus the Chiefs, and then tie versus the Texans. But other than that, their offense hasn't really been able to get going. And now they're going with a really unknown at quarterback, Sam Ehlinger. As you said, sixth round pick in 2021. He has one career appearance, which was last week, his start versus the Washington. He was 17 to 23, 201 yards, no TDs, no interceptions, 2 sacks, and then 6 rushes for 15 yards. So it's kind of an unknown, whereas Matt Ryan, you at least know what you're getting, which I think is not much, which is why I was surprised the Colts. I think they were one of the first teams in the offseason to make a trade for a quarterback, and they went for Matt Ryan when they really could have gone for anyone. They could have gone for Jimmy G. They could have gone for Baker. Granted, Baker hasn't really turned out well in Carolina, but that's another story. But I didn't understand them going for Matt Ryan, but I guess if you don't think he's going to be able to give you much, at least make the switch. Whereas Sam Ehlinger, he might be able to give you the same production, but he might be able to give you some upside. They did have 6 rushes with him last week. That's something that Bill talked about a little bit in his press conference, where he's not sure if it was more just the scheme versus Washington or if they plan on having quarterback runs, but the Patriots this year against quarterback runs haven't been successful. So I wonder if that's something that they're going to try and look to do more this week too.
Yep. And the other big thing, they fired the offensive coordinator, Marcus Brady, even though he doesn't call the plays, basically as a scapegoat, trying to probably to protect Frank Reich's job. They traded their second best running back. And then that leads me into the next thing, where the best running back, Jonathan Taylor, mispracticed on Wednesday, so today, and he re-aggravated his ankle injury, which kept him out 2 weeks beforehand. And so that might be good news for the Patriots. Never good for an injury, but if he doesn't play this game, they'd be down their top 2 running backs, and that's basically all their offense so far.
Yeah. So he's one of the big pieces where last year he was the best running back in football. And when the Patriots played them, he was a big reason why the Patriots lost. He ran 29 times for 170 yards and a touchdown. And then this season, he started the season well. Week 1, he had 161 yards, 1 TD versus the Texans, and kind of seemed like he was taking off where he left off. But he's only had 301 yards in the remaining 5. He's played only 6 games, 6 of the 8 games where, like you said, he missed 2 to injury. But in the other 5, he only ran for a combined 301 yards, no TDs. He hasn't even eclipsed 80 yards in any of those games. And his best game was actually last week versus Washington, where he ran for 76 yards and 16 carries. But he hasn't been the same running back outside of week 1. So with that ankle injury, that might be something where hopefully you don't want opponents to be injured, but that might limit the Colts' best player. But if the Patriots want to have success, they have to, if he plays, you have to take him out of the game, limit his production, and then have the rest of your opponents beat them. So he's going to be the key to the game if he plays. You're going to have to limit him because, like we saw last year, if you're not able to limit him, it might be tough to have success.
Yep. And last year they didn't limit him, and then they really limited Carson Wentz because he blows.
Yeah.
And they still ended up winning.
Carson Wentz, I think he only had 5 completions. Yeah, 5 completions on 12 attempts for 57 yards last year, and the Colts still won by 10.
Yeah. So their defense is really their biggest strength this year.
Yep.
7th lowest points allowed. So that's why it really kind of reminds me of the Bears game too, just because the Bears defense is really good. Their offense stinks. And same thing really with this team. I don't really know if Ehlinger is really a mobile quarterback or not, but he had those design runs. Fields is definitely a mobile quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see.
Another thing with their defense is very similar to last year, and their defense gave the Patriots offense trouble. But part of the thing that might help their stats is outside of Mahomes week 3, granted they won that game, they haven't really played any good quarterbacks. They faced Davis Mills, Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson, who sucks this year, Trevor Lawrence again, Ryan Tannehill again, and Taylor Heineke. So that might show why their stats are better than you might expect, but they do have a lot of talent on that defensive side of the ball.
Yep. So what are some key names to watch out on defense for the Colts?
Yeah, so I'd say the three top ones you have to watch out for are Shaq Leonard at linebacker. He's one of, if not the best linebackers in football. He's been all pro every single season in his career, his first 4 years, and he's in his 5th year now. Another one is DeForest Buckner, their defensive tackle, which he's just been showing up all on tape, and he's a 2-time all pro at defensive tackle. He's one of the top 3 defensive tackles in football. I'd probably put him number 2 outside of Aaron Donald, but he has 4 sacks this year. He's disruptive in the run game. You also have Stephon Gilmore, old Patriot friend, where he's been very productive this year, even though he is getting older. He's still being productive. They're using him all across the field in all situations. So they're not lining him up on just like the left side as well. Kenny Moore, their nickel cornerback, he was a Pro Bowler last year. He's a former Patriot as well. He was an undrafted rookie free agent, I believe, in 2017, where the Patriots cut him at the end of roster cuts, but they hoped to sign him to the practice squad, but the Colts snagged him. He's someone that actually said his 4 months with the Patriots was the most miserable time of his career, and he made him think about retiring, but he's been productive this year. Then you have Kwity Paye, their edge rusher, defensive end, who's in his 2nd year. He's a Rhode Island native, went to Bishop Hendricken and then University of Michigan. He has 3 sacks this year. He's been productive. You have Yannick, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Nyaku, who's also another edge defensive end who has 4 sacks. Bobby Okereke, who I met at the Super Bowl party last year at linebacker. He's been very productive. So they have a lot of big names, fast, athletic guys on their defensive front, which is going to help them. And that's part of the reason why in the pass game, they have set their 7th best in passing yards allowed per game at just around 200. They're middle in the pack with 19 sacks, but they're getting pressure on about 25% of dropbacks, even though they're only blitzing on 16% of dropbacks, which is 7th lowest. And then their run defense has been very effective. They're 17th best in rushing yards allowed per game with 120, but they're 3rd best in rushing yards per carry at 4. And that's part of the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, they haven't really played too many key quarterbacks outside of Mahomes, but they're facing really big running backs, including Derrick Henry twice, Damian Pierce, who's had a really good season, Taylor Etienne, the Jaguars running back. So they're playing some good players, and they're still limiting the yards per carry. And then another thing with them is they are very disciplined. They have the 4th least amount of penalties per game with 4.6, and they have the 2nd least amount of penalty yards per game. So at least on the penalty front, they're not giving you any unforced penalties to give you their opponents free yards. So that's another reason why the Patriots are going to have to pretty much be sharp in all phases of the game, not turn the ball over, not give or have any penalties or limit your penalties, because the other team isn't going to be doing that either.
Yep. So key to the Pats, number 1, I heard you say limit the penalties, turnovers. We've already really mentioned taking out Jonathan Taylor, taking out Michael Pittman. What's your last key of the game?
I think the biggest one is establishing the ground game early, because that's going to open up your offense, and so you not become one-dimensional. Where last year, when the Patriots play the Colts, they didn't have Damian Harris, and then the offensive line struggled a little bit. Ramondre Stevenson wasn't able to get going. He only had 10 carries for 36 yards, and that forced the Patriots to throw, and they knew the Patriots were going to be throwing. So that's one thing. If you're able to establish your ground game early, that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for the offense, especially considering how talented and athletic this defense is for the Colts.
Yep. All right, going to predictions. Line right now, as of today, for Barstool Sportsbook, Patriots were favored by 5.5 points. Over under was 39.5. We got some good weather on Sunday. I'll be at the game again. Cloudy. I think it's partly actually cloudy. High is 74. Winds 10 to 20 miles per hour, so not anything too crazy. I'll give my prediction first. I got Patriots winning 27-13. I was thinking of it, trying to figure out how many they score. And the defense very similar to the Jets, where they get a lot of pressure, good corners. They scored 22 against the Jets. I think they're going to have improvement because it'll be Mac's second full game back. So I think some of those field goals will turn into an extra touchdown here. So 27-13 for me. Hit the
I have
over.
23-16 Patriots, just because I think this defense is better than the Jets, in my opinion, considering how athletic they are and how they have good players at all three defensive back, linebackers, and front defensive line front seven. So I think the Patriots will get another touchdown, then one more touchdown than they did last week. But I think they're still gonna, once they get in that 30-yard line, they're gonna struggle a little bit and have to kick a few field goals. So I have them winning 23-16 in a tight fought game where it's close at the end, but Patriots kind of have control throughout the second half, and the score makes it look tighter than it is.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks everyone again for listening to us. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. We'll listen to us on any of the podcast platforms, YouTube as well. We'll get the videos there. Check out the blog again, Pat's 300levelpod.com, and then look at us on Twitter, Instagram, Pat's 300level pod, and then look forward to talking to you guys next week.